Tony, we loved reading your book again. So this is the second Tony Hughes book in our series. By the way, I wouldn't say that we loved reading it if I didn't. I would have said the book is entitled, et cetera, et cetera. So I mean that when I say it. And this time you've co-authored it. So before we launch into a bunch of topics, because the book is 6 little books all tucked into one, to be honest. Can you just say a word about your co-author and collaborator, Justin Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I first met Justin Michael quite a few years ago. I'd started doing a lot of blogging inside the LinkedIn platform and starting to build a big following, and we connected there. And then I got to know him really well. And I came to regard Justin as the best practitioner and executor of modern selling practices. So the ability to, in essence, become a cyborg, man and machine, engaging with people, but at scale. And inside Combo Prospecting, which is my previous book, Justin did not want me to nominate who he was, but he was in essence the case study that I talked about in Tech Powered Sales. And then what we decided to do is in Combo Prospecting, then we decided to do Tech Powered Sales, and we decided to co-author. So my background is really strategic enterprise selling. And the thing we know is that if you load bad messaging and start to automate it, all you do is burn through a list and damage your brand very quickly. So my specialty is, you have to have clarity about who you're targeting, the buyer personas, nail the narrative, preempt potential objections that you're likely to encounter, really understand your true competitive differentiation, open in a way that negates the risk of the deal slipping and never closing. And Justin understands all of that. He's a good strategic seller himself, but what he was good was driving outreach at scale to create pipeline that can really survive. And I'd never seen anybody like him at that. So we really were kind of like the Batman and Robin of trying to bring all of this together, because there's plenty of people that are great with tools and tech, but they're not necessarily effective in delivering the right sales outcome and really breaking through with customers. Yeah.
Well, very, very cool to have a Batman Robin team writing this. I was, one of the things I was really blown away by, there was an echo from Combo Prospecting, but the thoroughness and the depth and breadth of the references you give of like, here's a tech platform and here's one and here's one and here's one that you could use if you want. We like this one, and you move on. If you just aggregated that list, so I'm kind of spruiking the book a little bit here, but for those folks who read a book and think like, oh, that was all okay, but what can I take away? Well, if one of the things you like to do is just strip mine somebody's ideas for good working hacks and tips and tech and sources, that it's like every half a chapter comes out with another list of yet another half dozen things you've not heard of or tried. And so it was it's a very generously written book in that respect.
Thank you. And we certainly took a risk in nominating specific tech platforms and tech companies.
Yeah, right.
We knew that the day that this book got published by HarperCollins Leadership and the American Management Association out in New York, we knew that the day it was published, it would be out of date in some way, because the tech industry is ferociously on the move. There's scale-ups that don't make it. There's people that get acquired. But we just thought it was really important that if we talk about intent data, how do you use technology to try and find where there's strong buying intent? Then we talked about the companies like 6sense, Bombora, Trigger, Albacross, Tech Target, those sorts of companies, so that as a seller, you can do some research and think, well, which one is best for me in my industry against my ideal customer profile? We talk, for example, about headless browser technologies that can sniff the websites, the URLs of companies that you nominate and start to identify what's the tech stack that's been running inside this company. Is there tech that can even look at job descriptions, as they're advertising for roles and imply what the tech is and really get a sense of where you should focus. Because if your ideal customer profile is a company that's maybe got a high growth profile and they're using a weak competitor of yours that does not scale well, you think, hey, this is really good. This is right in the sweet spot of my ideal customer profile. I've got, there's higher propensity for them to buy and for me to be able to win. So you basically go fishing in a pond where you're likely to get a really good yield. And we thought we need to talk about the technologies in a tangible way. Otherwise, they're just abstract concepts that people really struggle to apply.
Yeah, I think one of the things folks will come away with is that what sometimes can seem like looking at the night sky, where you don't have light pollution, you're just like, it is just a black background with a trillion little dots out there. And like, how would one differentiate one from another And I felt like there's a little bit of a constellations guide, right? You're like, well, those 6 up there, they're kind of a kind, and they're all part of Ursa Major. And then those 3 over there, they're kind of, Orion's belt and so forth. There was this taxonomy that I got as a reader. It was like, okay, these guys have actually differentiated something like sales engagement software from a CRM, which is actually one of those blind spots people have. Those are not the same thing.
Yeah, and in the book, and again, Justin Michael was instrumental in this. He's a genius in working out how do I create a mashup, which is my own tech stack. And we identified the essential elements within a stack and then the optional. And for those that are watching and listening to this now, we identified, obviously, you need a CRM, ideally with marketing automation embedded. So you want CRM and marketing automation really as one thing. I think that's really important, especially in the era now of RevOps. So this whole idea of let's operationalize revenue generation and bring sales and marketing together in a practical way that actually works. There's been lots of talk about this for a long time, but that's obviously the most at the heart or the foundation of the essential stack. And then you want social networked intelligence, things like LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You mentioned sales engagement platforms, these things that design cadences and sequencing, Outreach.io, SalesLoft, even within Salesforce, they've got high velocity sales now embedded in as cadence and sequencing tools. And then in the essential stack, data enrichment for mobile phone numbers, email addresses, trigger event monitoring. And then depending on the type of selling, if you've got a lot of people in a call center, parallel assisted dialers is a really interesting thing to drive up the productivity, and then basic collaboration tools. So we sort of identify as the essential piece. And then there's literally dozens of things you can add to augment at an optional level.
Let me just invite you to nerd out for a moment. Parallel assisted dialers. That was actually the one place where I had to slow down the listening speed, go back and be like, hang on a minute, hang on. I think maybe just because of my background, I was able to keep up. I'm not a capital T tech guy. I have medium TQ, but can you just say a few words about what that is? Because some folks listening in will be quite interested in that. For them, that I know that will be relevant.
Yeah, so in essence, parallel assisted dialing, the best example I know of this, and the founder, Chris, is the CEO. He's just such a great guy, but it's connect and sell. And what that does is it'll be dialing in the background, hundreds and hundreds of numbers. And once the person answers, not voicemail, when the person answers, it'll pop it through to you. Now, you need to obviously be in the zone, but basically you can be working within your CRM, doing all your things, and bang, a call will pop. And it also gives you the data that helps you contextualize the call. So it takes practice and skill to do this well, but it improves the productivity and the effectiveness of a seller on the phone enormously. So rather than you manually dialing, waiting to see what happens, this thing's doing it in the background and just putting people through that are ready to talk. Now, just as a caveat on this, I've had clients here in Australia engage with parallel assisted dialing tech, and you can get a lot of latency. And what we know is the moment the recipient of the call hears any kind of delay, right? If it sounds like it's delayed or it's a call center or something, they just go, ah, it's a seller spamming me. So,
Right. Yeah.
so if you're using parallel assisted dialing in North America, look up, the feedback is it works really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think skeptics will need to know, either folks who are skeptical before they just buy the book and read it, or skeptical within the course of their reading, is that these aren't like blind ringing endorsements for every possible tech in every other possible application, but rather just a cheerleading, flag carrying recommendation, like just do not do things manually that don't need to be done manually, and certainly like be open to a step up in your technical quotient.
Yeah, and just to go on with what you've just talked about, Kevin, we say in the book that to be successful in business and sales, you need to be reasonably IQ intelligent. You can't be dumb in life and be successful. But more importantly than that, probably, especially in the world of selling and leadership, you need high EQ. You need to understand yourself and others, your own strengths and weaknesses, how to read other people, relate to them, instill trust and confidence. But increasingly today, people also need TQ. They need technical quotient. They have to figure out, how do I become a little cyborg? I've got to up my level of productivity. And an old dog like me that can learn new tricks can be incredibly effective. So this whole thing of having a growth mindset and the right attitude. And if I just take it back down to some really simple things, if we ignore all the tech and think more about what's my strategy for being successful, if we peel that back, in my mind, be honest with yourself about product market fit,
Right.
And therefore, what really is your ideal customer profile? So it's crazy to think the whole world's a prospect, like, for example, if you sell CRM or something in the MarTech stack, and you think, oh, well, any company that has a marketing manager is a prospect. Well, no, not really. There's probably attributes you're looking for. They need to be above a certain size. Otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time with people that just can't afford what it is that you do. They maybe need to be experiencing certain levels of frustration or pain. So we know that organizations in either growth mode or in crisis mode are motivated to change and do things.
Right.
Organizations in even keel status quo are really difficult to move. So that we think about psychographic, firmographic, technographic elements of an ideal customer profile. Now, once you've defined that, the opportunity is to use some tech to go and find those companies. So, for example, just as a way to think about this, you can plug in the URLs of all of your most happy customers, and there's tech that will go and basically bring back to you technographic data about all of the common elements of those wonderful existing clients. And as an example of this, I was talking once with a professional services firm. They help in digital transformation, but they don't do anything at all with CRM systems, right? They're a level above and away from all of that. But when they analyzed the technographics of all of their existing clients, they found something really interesting. Almost all of their existing happy clients used Salesforce. Now, this consultancy does not do Salesforce consulting.
Right.
And you think, well, why is it relevant? Well, what they found was companies that have invested in Salesforce, that have made that investment. What they found was that they had this mindset of driving digital transformation. So whether it's Sage or whatever the particular vendor is, you think, well, if they've invested in this kind of thing, would it make them open to that?
I think that is such an interesting field in terms of prospecting. So, Sage's main community are firms who really cherish and understand the value of selling, but at which there's nobody whose name card has the word sales or selling or
Yes.
BD on it, right? And that's an interesting little heuristic. And these quirky heuristics sometimes can be the most powerful thing. So you realize, you know what, right or wrong, or, you know, maybe it's a total coincidence, but folks who buy Hermes ties are always happy to sign off on $250,000 of research subscriptions. So, you know, what's that? Well, we can psychologize about it or what have you, whatever else, but there it is. And if it's Ferragamo ties, it's a slightly different thing. And if it's no tie, it's a different thing. So there should be no correlation. I think the genius of that's rooted in the message you guys are sharing is you don't have to be an insanely observant what we say anthropologist to pick this stuff up. There's actually robots and tools and things that can see where you can't see, to help you see such things.
Yeah, because even for someone like Sage, if you identify there's a couple of competitors that we do a really good job in helping customers migrate away over to us at Sage. And when we talk to those clients that migrated away and over to Sage, we found there were some common things that had happened in their business. Like maybe they'd raised capital, they got to a certain growth level, they'd started expanding internationally. And then you go, wow, this is really interesting. So can we apply technology to crawl the web and find those competitors' customers? And then can we layer onto that and look for press releases and announcements where they've made an acquisition, expanded overseas, raised capital. And we go, now we've got a trigger event happening with an attribute, you know. Yes. So the attribute is they use a weak competitor's product that doesn't scale well. Now we're looking for a trigger event that maybe tech can monitor for. And then all of a sudden your own sellers or partners with Sage are just having these really productive sales conversations, you know, instead of trying to resurrect the dead where someone's got no motivation to move.
Can I take you back a step around TQ? Those two letters together come up throughout the book. In fact, there's these nice little like mile markers or you know, check-in points where it's like this is how it relates to TQ and so forth. For the readership, can you just sort of say a little bit about, again, maybe I can position this a little differently. The folks who will read this will be anywhere from already like high TQ to absolutely like stuck in the mud, you know, low single digits TQ. Can you just say a couple of words to the range of audience represented by that around what's going on with TQ, IQ, EQ?
Yes, so technical quotient is really our ability to use our tech tools effectively. So it's both knowledge and awareness, and then it's also our practical ability to apply what we know within a particular platform. So most people in business to business selling will be using LinkedIn. Many people are provided with, for example, a Sales Navigator license. Now, Sales Navigator is not cheap. It's a lot of money, and most people barely know how to use it. And the argument we talk about in the book is that imagine if you were wanting someone to come in and renovate your kitchen. So you've got a carpenter or a builder's coming in there, and all of a sudden you see them fumbling around, not knowing how to change the blade on their saw or how to sharpen any of their tools. They just can't use their own tools at all. You go, this is crazy. Like, I have no confidence in this person's ability to get the right result for me. And in selling, if a seller can't use something like Sales Navigator, if they can't use the search wizard, which obviously sits over the top of a Boolean search capability, if they can't save those searches and run them to, in essence, use Navigator as a role-based trigger event notification engine, then I would argue that your TQ is not where it really needs to be. So things like most sellers should know how to configure Google Alerts to use Sales Navigator well. They should know how to use basic sales intelligence plugins in Chrome, things like Lucia that a lot of recruiters use, that when you're in someone's LinkedIn profile, it'll surface email addresses and phone numbers. And obviously we need to work with platforms that are, for Europe, GDPR compliant, or in the States, CCPA compliant. So we need to do all of those things, but we need to get technology doing the things that it does well so we can focus on the human things that make a difference. So So what we argue is tech is good at filtering big data. So even within your own CRM, most people are drowning in lists in their CRM. You're thinking, well, how do I filter? How do I create good dashboards that give me focus?
Yeah.
And then how do I use tech for trigger analysis, for pattern matching, for buying intent? What are the things that I can automate? And there's an awesome product that's just coming on to the market now, FlyCuts. And it's a brilliant product. And basically what it enables you to do, I've actually invested in this business. I'm taking an advisory role, but for every seller, just little shortcuts on your keyboard that automate all of the common messages you're sending people.
Right.
So yeah, so like for example, for me, I'll often get messages in LinkedIn, hey, I love the book. And I need to type, hey, thank you so much for the feedback. Would you mind doing an Amazon review? Really looking forward to seeing your feedback on Amazon. Now, rather than typing all that, I just go bang, bang, and it's done. Like it's off. So
you code in the hotkeys, right? You go like,
yes.
Control Alt T, and that throws that's what
and it goes bang. Yeah.
So,
yep.
Very cool. Very cool.
Right? And but it works across platforms. You can be in LinkedIn, you can be in Slack, you can be in Teams, you could be in Gmail.
Beautiful.
And it's a really simple thing, but if you use a tool like that, Mario Martinez, it's his company. If you do that well, it gives you back time. Like it'd give a seller back 40 minutes to 60 minutes of their time in a day. It just helps them be far more effective.
Well, just as you're saying that, there's some great applications for some other folks too, where they need to go back over the same territory.
Yeah, exactly. So
whether in our world we try to we're building academies for companies, and so if you're going to teach a module like or say write a book, a manuscript like yours, there's a lot of stuff you're hitting back again and again. It might be a certain key phrase or something. What a cool idea.
Yeah.
We have to link that in when we share this on LinkedIn. We have to share the link for that. That's super.
Yeah, it's really brilliant. So it's Mario Martinez and it's Vengresso, but FlyCuts or FlyMessage is the product they've created, and it's just incredible. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I could see a number of fields where that would be functional.
Yeah, because it's really not just sales, right?
You hinted at something which I think is a really worthy message, which is some of this tech in the hands of that kind of silver-haired Luddite, right? So you're like, oh, I'm self-admittedly low TQ and I haven't got time for that, old dog, new tricks, blah, blah, blah. But actually, there's almost in some ways no better candidate to put some of these things to use than that fellow that I've just kind of invented, that kind of avatar of a caricature. Because once they can they're so good at the EQ already.
Yeah.
That a little exactly. EQ will go a long way.
Yeah, and like I find a lot of younger sellers just aren't very good at writing in a way that resonates well with an older buyer.
Right.
So you think, well, an older buyer, might be really good at crafting all this messaging, but they're not very good at using tool and text to be more productive. They need to get more hustle and more productivity.
Yes.
Well, that's where this thing called FlyMessage, like if they're building all of this, no matter what's coming up, they're just using all these little shortcuts and they're building incredibly effective messaging really fast, rather than typing shorthand like a lot of other people do. They'll get great results.
Yeah, I had that on my sort of journey card here for things to ask you about. You take a moment in the book to talk about the importance of writing, and that goes hand in hand with the fact that you're also suggesting certain tech, Grammarly and some other things that will help you like shortcut, tighten up, work on tone and so forth. But you're no advocate of handing the driver's seat over to the robot when it comes to scripting the message.
Yeah, well, Kevin, let me tell you a bit of a sad story, a bit of an indictment on how if anyone lets the bots run wild, it just trashes your brand and burns you through a list really badly. 48 hours ago, I started getting messages inside LinkedIn in my in-mail inbox. Now I've got 340,000 followers in LinkedIn. So I drown in people running outreach to me. And what I see is appalling, just really clumsy personalization, really bad messaging. But just in the last 48 hours, I've had nearly 90, that's 90, messages. I could share my screen and show you, right? But people congratulating me on my work anniversary at Sales IQ Global, which is a new business I've been co-founder of. 90 messages. Congratulations on your work anniversary, right? And then some of them tag that with, are you struggling with doubling growth? Like they just clumsy questions or bad outreach. But nearly 90 people congratulating me on my work anniversary, and there's no relevance. Like, that is not relevant. So that's someone grabbing an automated personalization attribute and thinking that'll create engagement.
Yes.
It hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting it run wild is a great image. There's the classic critique of Ford when he was like, what we're going to do? We're going to have specialization. And John here is only going to attach door handles. Like, all right, super. It's like, if John's having a bad day, you get a huge run of cars with terrible door handles on the left side, and I just have this image of, anytime you automate something and you're willing to put that driving force behind it, you had better get the recipe right before you press the big red button.
Yeah, and what I find is, you can use Lavender and Grammarly, like these great enterprise tools to help with writing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, in a digital world, if you can't write well, you're in trouble, right? So you have to be able to write content that breaks through. And most people's content is just way too long. Anything that's long doesn't get cut through with a senior decision maker.
Too long.
Yeah, it's just, whenever I look at anything, I'm thinking, can I deal with this in a few seconds? And is it relevant? Okay, I'll read it. And if it's neither of those two things in my mind, I'm out. I'm just skimming my inbox. As we speak right now, I've got 25,000 unread emails in my Gmail inbox, and I've literally given up. I skim, and I think if it's important, people will chase me. And I know that's not great. I'm kind of embarrassed about saying that. But, then I get into WhatsApp. I get into text messaging, I get into InMail, I get into Slack channels, I get into Teams channels. Like, everywhere I look, there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages. And I can't deal with them all. And that's the world of the busy senior buyer that most of us are trying to get to. So how do we become the signal amidst the noise? And that's the balance we really tried to achieve with the book, is old school and new school working together is how you can be effective. If you're just old school, you'll be a Luddite and a dinosaur, and you'll end up being replaced. Anyone who fails to embrace technology is doomed and destined to be replaced by it. Any seller who allows themselves just to be someone transacting commodities, but they figure I build relationships with people, well, buyers aren't looking for relationships. They're actually not looking for that. So the thing you think is valuable is actually not what they want. And I'll give you a true story in a minute that'll blow your mind. But equally, if you're just good at tick and flick with tech, and you're loading spam into the Gatling gun of automation, well, that's not going to be effective either, even though you know how to configure all of these things and stand up multiple domains and blast things out and try and overcome all of the tech that's blocking, the spamming. You still have to get your messaging right. Hey, if I can, let me tell you a true story, and I won't say the names of the company or the name of the company, but this is absolutely a true story. I met with 30 CEOs in Australia about a year ago, and one of the CEOs is running Australia, the Australian region, for a North American multinational. And what this company does is they provide the compounding substances for a pharmacist, what we would call in Australia a chemist. So we call them chemist shops, you call them pharmacists or drugstores. And this company in COVID in America, their two biggest highest volume territories lost their reps through COVID. The people resigned, the great resignation, or they got sick, they left, and the company was unable to replace them or move anybody else into the territory. So for 5 months, there's no one covering the territory. And then they're looking at their reports out of CRM and their other systems, and they go, what is going on here? These 2 territories with no rep, they're growing, and they're now the most profitable territories in the company in North America. So then they go and interview the customers. They fly out and they go see customers, and they say, hey, we're so sorry that we have not been able to replace Mary. You're a very important client. We're doing our best to replace her. And we've noticed, you're still transacting, with us, and we'd like to have a conversation about it. And the person said, well, look, it's okay if you don't replace Mary. I'm fine. And as they're digging in, they're going, but surely there's something that Mary provides you that you value. Like, surely, we spend a lot of money on our field relationship managers, our field account managers. Surely there's something. And they go, well, actually there is. There's one thing. Mary always gets me a discount. And the company goes, holy hell, like the only thing they value when Mary turns up, because when Mary turns up, she stands in the line with the customers.
Yeah.
She's taking them away from serving clients, taking time away, but she gets them a discount. And here's what they decided in Australia. They said, Australia's a little microcosm of what North America is. They only had 5 field reps in Australia. They redeployed all 5, and they took half of the money they saved and they spent it on better communications and better technical support on the phone with extended hours. Their business has grown like crazy, and it's more profitable. Now, will it stay that way forever? Maybe it won't, because a rep from a competitor will go and build the relationship and maybe take the customers away. But the customers didn't value the professional visitor rep that interrupted them serving customers. They just didn't see any value other than, well, can you get me a discount on this order? That was it. And that's an example of investing money in tech and customer experience, because the war for customers today is not around salesmanship or saleswomanship. It's not around your ability to sell. It's all around the experience you create for clients. If you make it easy to transact, easy to get support, if you can provide genuine insights. There's a company I'm been doing some work with. I may go on their board in Australia. They work globally, called Live Prezzo. And they automate the production of amazing reports for customers, all automated. So whether it's for example, in the travel industry, you want to send to your customer these insightful reports about their travel spend and how much is in policy and not, and how much they could have saved by booking earlier. And someone was manually creating all of this and going and sitting down with the client. Well, now they're automating the production, sending them to their clients. So they stratify their clients, and they think there's a big segment, the Pareto principle, 80-20, for 80% of the lower transaction volumes, we can drive loyalty and growth by providing all of these insights without having to have a person going and visiting them and taking their time. And they're achieving amazing results. That's a good example of tech.
It's really that's so compelling, right? I think realizing that what initially seems like service, right? Because it's got a human to human look, the warmth and the flesh of my hand touch the warmth and the flesh of theirs, and therefore value has been added, is way too simple a way to think about it.
Yeah.
In that case, actually, it's very interesting because it's value destructive, because I can even imagine the client's like, oh dear, here comes Mary, like throw her a bone, help her feel like she's doing something useful, ask her for a discount. The company walks away a little poorer for having sent Mary along.
It's true. They end up eroding their own margins. And that's the thing with selling. Human selling needs to provide genuine insight. If we look at many industries, technology has just disrupted roles, and sellers, I believe, crazily live in this delusion that I'm going to be okay. I'm great at relationships. But if you look at the aviation industry, there used to be the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, the navigator, the spare person on long haul flights.
Yeah.
The only aircraft in the world with 3 people on the flight deck now is the Airbus A380. And even now on the news here in Australia, they're talking, the airlines and the airline manufacturers and the airline operators are talking about 1 pilot in the cockpit. And I'm
Right.
thinking, I'm not comfortable with that as a flying passenger. What if he has a heart attack? I want a second person. But technology does a better job of monitoring engines and flight systems and doing
Yes.
navigation. Most of the crashes are because of the humans. So in selling, every seller's got to think, what in my role can I automate? What in my role can I partner with technology to augment my own capability? And how can tech identify insights within the flood of data that I can then use to go and build amazing conversations with customers? Because at the end of the day, if we're not turning up with an insight, if we don't have a point of view for how they can improve their business, if we're just the purveyor of information and transacting and a relationship, they're the people that are really in trouble. So in the book, Justin and I boldly predict that about 1/3 of B2B sales roles will disappear this decade.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's stick a WhatsApp alarm on, and exactly a decade from now we'll check in. I suspect you might be conservative actually on that one.
There's certainly a move from field sales to inside sales. So we believe there'll be less field sellers, but they'll be even more senior. They'll still be highly paid.
Yeah.
But the value they create needs to elevate. And there'll be a lot of growth in the inside sales function, supported by a bigger and bigger tech spend. So employers are going to have lower cost people in the office, better supported with tech to drive the front end of the funnel more effectively.
Can I play devil's advocate on a couple of things? So the devil's advocate says it seems like you guys are just accelerating, you're adding your weight behind this sort of direction of a fever pitch in robot driven sales. Like there's something pleasurable and honorable about being sold to by somebody who's going to take the time, be personal, be human, not like suss you out and evaluate whether you're worth talking to as fast as possible, but rather like look you in the eye and see what's going on. And isn't it the case that tech-powered sales actually just dogpiles on what already is sort of a negative direction?
Yes. The big risk that we highlight in the book is anyone who seeks to automate and does it poorly, they're going to damage their own personal brand and their ability to be successful in the marketplace terribly. And I personally believe that the future of selling with technology is going to do the initial matchmaking. So technology should be able to identify ICP, ideal customer profile, trigger events, and do the matchmaking. So there'll be some automation around you, Tony the human, should be talking with this person, Mary the human. For these reasons, here's why. And here's a report to support the conversation. So that when I run outreach to Mary, it's, hey, Mary, I noticed, I'm aware of, based on this trend you're currently dealing with within your own industry and your role, I think there may be a way for you too. And then you talk about how Mary can drive improved results.
Yeah.
You have proof of it. So what we want is technology to improve the productivity of the sellers. A lot of sellers' time is spent being really ineffective, and that's the opportunity.
Yeah. The other area, to make a bit of a parallel jump, Tony, that I thought there's just good wisdom in this book, and in Southeast Asia, where we do most of our work, I know this is not so rigorous a practice yet. I couldn't say actually whether in Australia, North America, or elsewhere it is, but you talk at some length about testing. It's not just simply A/B testing, but the logic, the rationale, the value of testing and a testing regime. So for those who will read the book, I'll kind of direct them to that chapter, but maybe you can say a few words about why that matters and how that fits in?
We need to adopt a customer-centric approach for all that we do. So there'll be typically a day or days of the week where you're most likely to be able to secure engagement with people, and then times of day. So for example, there's been a lot of research done with emails that go out with email automation platforms. Most email goes out in business hours, and yet it's the shoulders of the day in the evening where you actually get the most engagement from people receiving it. So what that says is, if I'm sending an email to someone, I'm taking an email-led approach, I want emails to go out in the evening or very early in the morning. I found myself in my world when I'm dealing with, so I do a lot of work in the tech sector. For senior managers, Mondays is usually their meetings madness day. They're just back to back all day on Monday. They try and keep Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday available to go and travel, to get out into the field and to work with their people. I know for me, when I've been, CEO of a company or sales director of a public corporation, I've never wanted to fly back into Sydney, where I live, on a Friday evening. Like, that's just what a hellish way to try and start your weekend, exhausted, burnt out, Friday night peak hour traffic, Friday night chaos at the airport. So I typically try and avoid travel on a Friday. So what all this means is, if you're running outreach on a Monday in business hours, you're never going to typically get people. When they're traveling is a great time to engage them. If they're in an Uber or they're traveling, they're on their device, they're looking. A Friday afternoon is typically a great time to call somebody. Evenings, early mornings is a great time to send emails. So this A/B testing regime is, as you say, it's not just A/B testing, it's understanding your buyer personas and the industries you operate in. I was dealing with one company that sells, of all things, to florists, flower shop operators, right? And we know that florists sort of 2-3 mornings a week are up at 3:30 in the morning going to the market, getting flowers and stock.
Right.
But like, so, but if you think like, because I said to the company, get out of your own head and think about the world of the person you're selling to. If they're trying to serve people in their store, they're not going to want to talk to you. Like, you're engaging them, you're taking money away from them, you're stressing them out. It's like this thing of drugstores or pharmacists going and visiting them while they're trying to serve clients. Like, it's like the pharmaceutical industry trying to get to doctors. They've got these little, 6-minute or 12-minute billing windows, and they're giving up one of their billing windows if they see a rep, right? Yeah. So like, we just need to think about them and their world. When is it actually convenient for them? And often when people are traveling in a motor vehicle, in an Uber or driving themselves, they're happy to have a conversation. Like, that's all okay. So beyond A/B testing, really think about, what is the world of my client?
Yeah, I took such courage from that, encouragement rather, from that section, because, when in our work, when we try to build professional development academies at our clients, one of the chief skills that goes unrecognized is just a general sense of reflection. We can actually use a lot of synonyms here, right? Review, reflection, looking back, feedback, etc. Doing A/B testing is from the start, or as I was reading, I was like, from the start, we are going to assume that we're going to do this, but then we are building in a moment where we're going to look back and say, was that smart or stupid? Rather than declaring that it was smart, before we actually press the big red button, be like, we're geniuses. Just be humble and say, who knows? Let's send 3-sentence emails on a Thursday at 4:00 and find out what the market says, rather than, declaring ourselves the smartest guys in the room.
Yeah, and even for what you do, Kevin, at Sage, with corporate academies, there's different buyer personas that will always be involved in making a decision. There's people that say yes and others that can say no, even as from a prioritization point of view, and even figuring out what's the correct sequence of the dominoes falling inside a potential customer. Where is it that we should really start? Where are we going to drive the support? What does the business case really look like in the minds of the people that really matter in doing some kind of academy? Yeah. So
yes.
And again, they're probably already doing something, like maybe they've got Maybe they've got an LMS in place, they're doing things, some of the program, maybe working with a competitor, in-house versus out-house, actually outsource, I should say, not out-house, but in-house versus outsource. But really understanding that really changes the dynamics of the conversation. And what we know is that opening is the most difficult and most important phase of selling. If we don't open well, there will be no opportunity. And one of the big mistakes that many sellers make is they're good enough to generate a level of interest that then consumes time and energy and resources, but they're not good enough to create genuine intent to change the way the customer's operating.
Yeah.
So unless we open in a way that gets to the business case for change, like what really is the improved future state results that this person could drive in their role, because unless they know why, you know, putting academies in place and doing it well is going to move the needle on performance. And most sellers talk about ROI and they talk about how, you know, why we're unique and how we're different. But the reality is what's needed is clarity about the commercial impact and how fast this is going to pay for itself.
Yes.
Because increasingly today in this new economy, as decisions bubble up for approval, inevitably someone says, look, it makes sense. Look, I'm comfortable with Sage. I can see this makes sense. But we've got 17 other things we as a board are being asked to approve right now. There's a lot of fatigue in the organization. We can't do everything. You know, why this one amongst the other 16, 17? And often the person we're selling to is not very good at answering that question.
Yeah, right. So you have to give them a script. Well,
and that's the thing. Like you can be great with tech-powered selling, but at the end of the day, this old school approach and a bit of gray hair, because the thing I say to my sellers I work with is the person you're working with, your coach, advocate, champion, economic buyer, whatever you want to call them in this deal.
Yeah.
When they get pushback, you need to say to them, hey, when you take this to the board, to the executive team, and you get some pushback, and it's almost certain you will, like, you know, we're in a new economy right now. Everything's under the microscope for why we should go ahead. How are you going to finish these two sentences? This is essential because it pays for itself by. So how are you going to finish those two sentences? And there's nothing tech-powered sales about that. That's old school selling.
Yeah, that's right.
But we need to
fuller brush guy stuff.
Yeah, exactly right.
And respect to the generation.
Yeah, exactly. But when we open the opportunity, we need to be thinking about everything leads eventually to the boardroom and pushback. So we need to open in a way that heads that objection and problem off at the pass. So when we're opening, if we're clear about our ideal customer profile and our buyer personas and the commercial value, the commercial impact of change, and then what are we looking for in terms of the attributes that define who we should target, and then the trigger events that give us the right context.
Yeah. And
then the tools that indicate strong buying intent. Then we go deep, we go really deep and invest our time where we get a far greater return, as opposed to let's spam the galaxy, you know, with all of this tech-driven rubbish that's loaded into the Gatling gun of automation. And that's the danger, right? People think tech-powered sales, I'm going to load my crap messaging into outreach.io or, you know, some other tool and just blast it out, and I'm going to try and flush out the people in the buying window. Because at any given point in time, 3% of the market's looking for what we do, but 40% of the market is open to change. And strategic selling is really about engaging the 40%, because then we get to create bias and set the right agenda. Whereas the 3% is a red ocean shark feeding frenzy of competition, typically.
I recognize the red ocean reference. Anthony Iannarino and I spoke the day before yesterday.
He's great
because he's got a lovely new book. The guy is very prolific, as you know. But he's got this book that's almost like a love letter to sales leaders.
Yeah,
uniquely, and how challenging and difficult that is. But his candor around the red ocean and like, look, let's not all pretend that everyone gets to just expand the pie with brand new ideas is, I think, very welcome.
Yeah, exactly. And the sales leader role is the is the toughest role in the company, and it's typically the weak link in the revenue chain for most organizations. And I don't say that as a criticism of the sales leader. They're just spread incredibly thin, like they're increasingly spread thin, trying to deal with a lot of manage up and a lot of protect down, because a lot of stuff gets pushed down that they needed to be shielded from. And they often feel like they age a whole year of their life at the end of every quarter. And they're stuck in the middle of all of the people thrashing around ineffectively, delivering excuses and these, crazy expectations for profitable growth that are just relentless. And at the end of the day, every good sales leader needs to embrace the concept of revenue operations. Like, how do we operationalize all of this?
Yes.
We need to find a way to build a machine and then apply our valuable humans in a way where they're doing the right activities.
That's something that I was sort of saving to ask you about, because in a couple of places you talk about the significance of being educated, or training, learning, development, specifically on this tech, right? So suppose somebody has just a war chest of a budget to spend on tech. That doesn't get you there.
No.
Throwing money around and going, oh, I'm going to get outreach over here and Venmo over there, and we're going to get a plug-in for here. And like a fellow taught me about, some other nice gizmo, and the robots will do it for us. There's still a very critical missing piece, which is dedicating time and attention to being good at these tools. I love your carpenter metaphor, right? Doesn't know how to change the blade on the circular saw.
Yeah.
So what's the point?
Yeah, because his blade's gone blunt and he's doing bad work, but it's, I don't know how to change the blade, right? It's to give you a crazy example. I've had people that I'm working with, I'll phone their cell phone and it diverts, and I get an automated telco message, at the sound of the tone, leave a message, it'll be converted from voice to text. And I'm thinking, did I dial the right number? Is this really Michelle's phone number that I've called? And I'll say to Michelle later, hey, Michelle, it'd be really good, I think, feel free to disagree, but I think it'd be really good to configure your voicemail greeting to say, hey, this is Michelle. Please leave a message. I'll get back to you as soon as I can, just so they hear your beautiful voice. And they inevitably say, oh yeah, I haven't figured out how to configure my voicemail greeting. And I'm thinking the most basic tool of trade for seller is their phone. Like, what do you mean you don't know how to get into the voicemail back end and get your greeting going? So you're right. Imagine if you were about to board an airplane and you're on the threshold of the plane and you look left into the cockpit and you overhear the pilot say to the co-pilot, hey, look, I love flying. I really do, but look, I'm just not into all the tech. Like, you turn around and get off, right? You think you cannot be a pilot.
Yeah.
You cannot be a surgeon, a pilot,
Yeah.
a pathologist, a seller, an accountant. Like, there's no white collar profession in the world that you can call yourself a professional and be any good at if you don't embrace the tech, because tech's changing every profession.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, couple things that we should maybe leave it there. We're going to give a ringing flag bearing endorsement for people to just get the book, like we did with combo prospecting. Obviously, couple things though that I'd love to ask you, if I may. I know that you read a ton. I know that bookshelf behind you is not a painted wall. What have you been reading these days that you would recommend? So again, Tony, our community tends to be like 2 or 3 degrees, 10 to 30 years of experience, usually in professional services. So they're smart folks, they're driven folks, but they're also readers. What have you been reading that you think people should give a look at?
So it's sad to say I've got a pile beside my bed about 3 foot tall of books I'm trying to get through.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I'm reading Essentialism at the moment.
Okay.
I've just really struggled with taking on too much. I need to I need to embrace this thing of more is less. So I'm really enjoying Essentialism. And I'm working on a number of other books concurrently at the moment. So I've been doing a lot of writing rather than a lot of reading right now.
I see. So in your sort of reading habit, it's often R&D and desktop work to produce what you're writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I'm really mainly doing that.
Your guys' references were very abundant through this book. It's clear that not just books, but blogs and papers and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd really encourage people to follow Justin Michael. So Justin Michael, the co-author of Tech Powered Sales. He's a prolific writer. He's got a new book that's coming out at Christmas time. It's being published by Wiley in the States. So definitely connect with Justin Michael inside LinkedIn and follow him. He's great.
Super. Well, when we share this on LinkedIn, we'll tag him as well.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
think that's welcome.
Yeah.
So
and then
Kevin,
lastly,
you've got a lot going on besides just writing books. We know that. How would you like people to sort of look you up and engage you? Are you talking? Are you consulting? But I've just learned you're investing in some cool little early stage businesses. How would you like people to track you down and engage you, Tony?
The best thing is connect with me inside LinkedIn. So just search Tony J. Hughes in LinkedIn. I've got a keynote speaker website and my author website, and all of the podcasts I do are all there for free. That's tonyhughes.com.au. And then salesiqglobal.com is my sales methodology website. So we've created programs, especially around solving the top of funnel pipeline problem that people can go ahead and go through. So salesiqglobal.com, tonyhughes.com.au, and feel free to connect with me inside LinkedIn.
Only don't congratulate you on your work anniversary. It's
Yeah.
and leave it at that, and hope that that's going to carry the day.
Yeah, yes, that's great. So Kevin, thank you, and I really love all that you do, and thanks for taking the time to look me up and have another conversation. Thank you.
I like it, Tony. Take care. Great afternoon.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kevin. Thanks. Bye.